Are you a footballer who wants to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level? My new ebook, Strength and Conditioning 101 for Female Footballers, is now available. For free and instant access, simply head on over to jacobandre.com. Link is in the show notes. The Women's Footy Podcast is brought to you by Fitnessworks. With 3 convenient locations in Darwin at Darwin City, Nightcliff and Allawa, these gyms are world-class family exercise centres offering the latest equipment with friendly and fully qualified staff. For more information, check out fitnessworksnt.com.au. G'day and welcome to the Women's Footy Podcast. Today I'm speaking to Jarrad Kay from Richmond Football Club and a few other places which we'll talk about. Jarrad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So first question, let's just jump straight into it. Can you share your journey and how you became involved in Australian rules football?
Yeah, in the short, it first probably started when I got asked to come down to the Next Gen Academy at St Kilda. They wanted me to do the high performance stuff for the under 13s, 14s and 15s, which is like an interleague thing. Your best players in your metro league play other best players from other metropolitan leagues. And when I was in the interview, I said, is there scope for me to come on as a football coach rather than a high performance person? And they said, they're a bit shocked at that, but they said, yes, no, you can join the under 15s. So I did that. I did that for 2 seasons, and I got one of my staff here at the gym, Jeff Dallman. He came down and ran the high performance stuff for the 13s, 14s, and 15s. And from that, it matured into a role doing the high performance stuff for St Kilda's Next Gen Academy, which is their 16, 17s, and 18-year-olds. So father-son prospects, international kids who have a parent born overseas or who are born overseas, and then Indigenous footballers as well, who are through the St Kilda area. So from I think it's about Mornington all the way up to St Kilda. And that was great. Got to work alongside Nick Del Santo, be a bit more involved in what's happening at the club as well. Got to spend some time with the men's program. And that's where it really started festering in me that, I always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to work in professional sport, and AFL's always been at the top of that list. But from there, I was like, no, I have to get involved in clubland, in professional sport. This is where I need to be. Not only is football a passion of mine, it's our number one sport. I feel like there's the most resources put into AFL football. So, that was it. And then I spent about 9 months with the Next Gen Academy, and I just come back from America. And then Dal said to me, I want you to apply for the women's high performance role. I was a bit shocked when he said that because I didn't have much experience in professional sport. And a high performance manager is a huge role. Like, as you spoke to Eliza, she wears so many different hats. She does so many things around the club, and she's also been involved in professional sport for numerous years, learning and I guess developing her craft. So I went for that interview, and it was pretty daunting. I didn't know what to kind of expect. I put together my best plan and answered the questions best I could. And David Mission was in the interview. He was asking some heavy hitting questions, and it probably put me on the back foot a bit with, okay, I'm not ready for this role yet. I got some good feedback, and I got some constructive feedback as well. So I stayed around, and I was doing some more stuff with the men's program, helping out through pre-season, and I was the bottom of the rung there. Like, I was just stacking and racking plates, and the Saints men's program are going through some staff changes at the time. So I was just helping out, being an extra set of hands. And it was great because it exposed to me to what they do at the professional level. And I think the culture change that they were making with what I saw in the high performance department, it was really cool. And there's some things I've taken from Brad Newton, who was the head S&C there. Things I took from him, and just questions and what I was asking him, and his detailed answers and his experience, because he'd been at a couple clubs before, Adelaide and GWS, I think. I then realized, maybe I'm not ready for this because of his level of expertise and what he knew. His wealth of knowledge is incredible. But I took things from that program and started implementing them in the Next Gen program. And then Richmond called me up before the AFLW season, and they said, and it changed very quickly, but they said, we want you to apply for our S&C role. I had a friend who was working at Richmond as a physio, and he must have put my name forward. And then they called me back the next day and they said, look, the role's changed. We've filled the S&C role. We want you to go for the head of rehab role. And I said, I knew that deep down, rehab, I've dipped my foot in over a long time. I've done 2 ACLs myself, and I've worked with countless people and alongside physios to get people back to playing sport, which I love. But I knew that strength and powers, that's my lane, that's my niche. So I knew that if I wanted to put my best foot forward, that's probably the job I needed to get into. So I said, oh, look, I don't want to waste your time because I don't think that role would suit me right now. And then the hours were a little more conflicting as well. They didn't quite match up with my current commitments with football and my gym as well. So I said no to that role, and then a few months later, I got a call from my friend Alex Cross, the physio, and he said, "Are you still interested in working in AFLW?" And I said, "Yeah, for sure. Like, it's something I definitely want to do." And a few calls later, I was in at Richmond the following week, and they told me that their S&C got a full-time job in basketball. I had the interview, then they invited me to come down to one of their trainings and kind of supervise and shadow what was going on, meet the current coach and the S&C guy, and then they said the week later, yep, you've got the job. I was heading off to Europe at that time, doing some work with the Australian dwarf team for the World Dwarf Games. So they were pretty flexible with that. I came back 2 weeks before the season started, and yeah, here I am. Just been extended into another year and really looking forward to the season ahead.
What year are we talking about here with starting at Richmond?
That was last year. So I started last August. So it was a bit of an adjustment period coming into a team and an environment 2 weeks before the season started. Obviously, a lot of relationships had formed and a lot of habits had formed already. And you come in as a new person, you go, well, I don't want to rock the boat too much. But in the meeting, the head of football and Eliza, they were asking me, and the head physio there, Liam Oliver, he was there too. They were asking me certain questions of like what I would do and how I'd implement certain things. And this is what I took from what I saw at St Kilda. One of the great things was they were doing a leaderboard in season to drive competition, and they were doing it on strength to power, strength to weight ratios, which I thought that just levels the playing field, and that's perfect because then your strongest, most powerful people aren't going to win absolutely everything. It gives other people an opportunity. Plus, when you're measuring things like power through upper body bench throws or jump squats, it kind of drives the athletes to get into the gym in season and actually really put in work and perform, because it can get quite mundane lifting in season. Like, we know that in season, all we're looking to do is get them up fresh to play on the weekend. Like, that's the most important quality, I guess. Availability is the best ability. So you have to find ways to drive, I guess, energy in the gym, because they are coming off after training, and we're training in the back end of winter, so it's always dark outside and it's gloomy and grim. So you have to find ways to, yeah, I guess, get people interested and get the team interested, but you have to find ways to really drive what we're trying to achieve there. So yeah, no, it's been really fun, and I'm lucky enough that Richmond have given me some time and hours in this off-season period as well. So it's great that they're investing further in the development of their players and strength programs. So I'm writing all the programs for all the girls in their off-season as well. So they pretty much get year-round service of, all right, we're trying to just build all of them up for getting ready for pre-season and getting ready for the season.
Awesome. So you mentioned right at the start that you always knew you wanted to work in high performance. What inspired you to become a strength and conditioning coach in the early part?
Yeah, so when I finished school, like many people, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I was always really sporty. I could never see myself working behind a desk, and I could never see myself working with my hands, like construction trade. So I fell into sports science degree. Did that for 2 years, and then I deferred for a year. I had an ACL reco at 18. when I was playing what is now NAB League, TAC Cup back then. And I got interested in the rehab process then. And then after my second ACL, I kind of, with the sports science background and stuff, I kind of go, all right, I could see myself doing this. I could see myself being involved in helping junior athletes prepare their bodies for future sporting endeavors, helping people who get injured getting back to sport, because I knew how important that was to me. I think one of the biggest things that I harp on about with all of our clients here at the gym, or anyone I speak to, is how important I think the role of sport and competition is within your daily life. And it's not saying that every single person has to be an athlete and has to be competing and racing and playing against other teams and people, but you see it as, even just in your own friendship group or your school year level, you see the people who were really sporty growing up, and then work gets in the way, family gets in the way, general interest, I guess, change, and they stop playing sport, and you can get into some really unhealthy habits. So something like fitness and sport has always been a massive part of what I'm doing. And I think the community aspect you get as well, and just that escape from things like work and family life and everything else. I think it's a really important aspect of life. So
Yeah, so you've
that's
worked
what,
across.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. So you worked across like male and female in that experience.
Yep.
What are some of the unique challenges that you see that females face compared to their male counterparts?
Yeah, I guess if we look at from a AFL perspective, and look, it's getting so much better now. When AFLW first started, and I had friends and colleagues who went into the AFLW system, and they'd be working till 10 p.m. and they'd be working, they'd be doing one out, and they'd have 4 different roles at a team. Now at Richmond, and I know at a lot of other clubs, I'm there to do the strength, power, and speed stuff. We have someone else doing the rehab. We have multiple physios. We have a high performance manager who looks after heaps of different aspects in terms of what we're doing and overseeing the program. We have a dietitian. We have a mental health and wellbeing person. We have a psychologist. So now it's getting to the point in AFLW where they have access to a lot more things. It's probably just the time commitment now. And then I guess at the top level, and you're seeing this with a lot of the girls playing VFL at the moment. There's not enough games to develop the young kids. And one of the biggest things with a 10 and 11 round season, it was 10 last year, 11 this year. One injury can derail your whole season. Like, you can get a little low grade hammy, and that could be 2 to 3 weeks, and you've missed a third of the season right there. So that's how important it is to keep these girls playing and on the park. And you have to be so careful with, I guess, training prescriptions and everything, because we need them to play. We need them to develop at the top level, because once you go down into that next, and you see it from any level of sport, but you go down to that next rung and you play VFL, it's a very different game. They're not developing at the same rate that they would if playing in the top level. So that'd probably be one of the main considerations I feel at the moment, just the time and the availability of playing at top level. But yeah, I did start by working predominantly with male athletes. I guess most gym environments, and even sports science in itself, it was a heavily dominated and saturated male industry. And in the past few years, I feel like women's sports now starting to really pick up momentum, and the young girls that are coming through are incredible athletes. And I look at this from a point of view where I think the AFL did the same thing. Like, you look back to Brisbane Lions 2001 to 2003 premiership team, most of those guys were just footballers, like big, strong, massive men, like unbelievable runners, but very different to the football teams you see now, where it's just athletes. Like, most teams now, you look at them and go, like a Max and Ben King, for example, you got 6'8" guys who can run faster than your midfielders. So now I think AFLW is starting to make that transition as well, where when it first started in its first 5 years, a lot of them they were footballers. like they knew the game, they could play the game. A lot of females came from different sports, but there wasn't that heavy domination of pure athletes. And now you're getting that. Like the girls coming through now, they've been in high performance programs in junior sport for 4 or 5 years, and they're coming into clubs and they are unbelievable runners. And they look just strong and wiry and super athletic. So it's starting to transition in terms of the morphology of footballers coming in, which is exciting because the older generation and the ones who've been in it since the start, they're starting to go, oh, like this is exciting, the changes, but it's also driving them to get better as well and see how long they can stick around in the top level for.
Yeah, interesting. One of the things I always say is, what's the one thing you do more than anything else in football? And it's running. It's an absolute running-based sport, and you just need to be an athlete more so than a footballer these days, as you say.
Yeah, definitely. And you're seeing some of the key position players in AFLW now. That's what they're having to do. They're having to put a massive emphasis on their running ability, their repeat effort ability. Because
sorry.
And like that's where the game's going. So if you can't do that, you may get overlooked for the younger player who they may not be as skillful, they may not know the game plan and everything as well, or be exposed to the level as much, but they can repeat effort and they can play at a higher level for a lot longer just because they have that base.
So how do you tailor your strength and conditioning programs to address the specific needs and physiology of female footballers? Is it much different to what you've done in the past with the men?
To be honest, not really. It's not a whole lot different. Like there's some considerations we have to make in season and in terms of exposure to them. But if I looked at the base program of what our AFLW program is and compared it to any men's program that I've worked with in season or off season, they're very similar. Like we're trying to chase the same goals. We're trying to get bigger. We're trying to get stronger. We're trying to get more powerful. We're exposing them to different skills. I guess one of the biggest things that I saw was it's just exposure. When you get into a men's program or you work with a male footballer who's played at a higher level, they've probably been exposed to strength and conditioning programs since 14, 15. You don't get too many instances now. Back when I first started S&C 8 years ago, you get a lot of 18-year-olds who would never have touched a weight. But now it seems to be the way men's football has gone, and especially in the junior ranks, is that they're ticking those boxes really well. With the women's programs, that's only starting to catch up now, and we're starting to see that trickle on effect. So it's what we've tried to do with our program is make the girls all really gym savvy so that they know the ins and outs, and any question that might arise with where do I position the bar here, or how am I doing this, or different variations they can make within their program. You're just giving them that education so that they can start to adjust, and you're building their confidence within themselves, within the gym. I think that's really important. If they're more confident and comfortable in a gym environment, they're going to want to be in there more often. So I guess that exposure is really important. And then other considerations are just, we have to, especially with our season, we have to be careful in terms of our loading because they do such a long pre-season and off-season for a set amount of games. We have to have them peaking because you can't lose too many games in AFLW and then catch up. Like you can't go an 0-3 Collingwood set up in the men's this year and hope to play finals, I guess, in the women's program. So in terms of the physiological stuff, there's not too much I would be working with directly in the gym. I'm kind of getting that information off, whether it be Eliza giving me some parameters to work around, or whether it be our dietitian Ali giving us some things to work around in terms of what kind of cycle the girls might be in. So they're the main things.
So this is a sort of question from the side here that I haven't prepped you with, but it just popped up into my head. The season is 11 weeks long, and you're talking about how long the preseason and off season is. It is pretty unique in that, I mean, I suppose not compared to an Olympics, they get like one competition every 4 years, but in terms of prepping for the season, how long is that off season, pre-season, you know, in relation to that 11-week season? It's pretty crazy, really.
It is crazy. So our girls, we finished our season in November, and I had the girls rolling through the gym by start of December. And it was pretty much, they had their 3 to 4 weeks, which is, I guess, similar to what a men's program would be. I work with some of the men's guys from different clubs, and they usually have 3 to 4 weeks off, and then they get stuck in. And it's from there, it's go. Like, I was kind of under the impression maybe 4 or 5 years ago that, oh yeah, you're at the club for 9 months of the year, and then outside of that, you kind of get to be a human and live. It's not exactly the case. Like, they're a professional athlete 12 months of the year, and they have to be a professional athlete 12 months of the year, because if they're not doing it, their competitors are doing it, or the girls who want their job, because it is a very highly competitive industry. You've only got 30 list spots. The girls who want their job are doing it. So you have any kind of drop off in your off season, you may be out of the game in a year or two. So it is a super competitive environment, and it's how you kind of build qualities up over that time. So a lot of our focus was, let's get really, really strong with all the girls. Let's get really strong. Let's get really savvy in the gym. And then after we get really strong and we know we're at a good place, let's start learning new skills. So we're doing a lot of Olympic lifting at the moment, and Olympic lifting derivatives, so that when we get into pre-season and when we get into in-season, we can just flick the switch and go, all right, now we're in a power block. Our focus is rate of force development. We want speed on the movement. We want the loads to be lighter. We want things that are transferable to what we're kind of doing on field. So we're going to go into our Olympic lifting, and they all go, yep, I spent 3 months learning this in the off season. I'm confident with it. I know how to do it. So that's one of our key focuses. But yeah, it is, they don't get much of an off period. We've got a lot of girls over in America at the moment, and they're all hitting me up going, Jarrad, I need a plan for this, this, and this, like a commercial gym program, a program if I can't get to the gym with bands and stuff. Like, they're so driven at the moment to continue improving. And I'm just trying to say, hey, look, you can relax a little bit. Like, you can have a bit of time off, enjoy your holiday, enjoy the wedding that you're over there for. 2 weeks of downtime isn't going to ruin what we've been building towards. But I guess that's the nature of elite athletes. Like, they're in competition mode 24/7, whether it's with themselves or with other people.
Yeah, I'm going to go off track again and dive into what you're sort of talking about here, because I'm very lucky to have had exposure to lots of different programs. And I think it was about 2 years ago now, there was a player on the Richmond list, Stephanie Williams, who's from Darwin, where
Yeah, I know
I
Steph.
am.
Yeah.
And Eliza asked me to look after her ACL rehab. And so the physio, I think it is Liam, who you're referring to, that I was liaising with. By the way, I was shocked at this. He was like, go and do whatever you want to do. Like, I'm here. This is what a program is, but you got full reins to do what you want. And I was like, far out. Okay. So I was using a bit of his stuff, using a bit of what I wanted to do. And so through that, I had exposure. Eliza, so we're referring to Eliza Morrison here, who, if anyone doesn't know who we're talking about, who's the head of strength and conditioning at Richmond, and also like a coach with my Footy Fit program. And she sent me everything. And so getting to see that and getting to have exposure to the Adelaide Crows program, the 3 seasons there with premierships in that time and a whole bunch of other stuff. I said to Eliza, Richmond's going to win a premiership in the next 3 years. That's my tip.
We hope so. We hope so. Yeah.
Because it is so well written. So I don't know if I'm actually asking a question here or just giving you some, like a pump up your tires, but it's so detailed and it's so well done. So I understand probably why those girls are wanting more and more, because they're probably motivated because of the quality of what they're getting there. So yeah, I don't know what I'm actually asking here, but
no,
maybe
I where you're coming from. Like, I guess I've worked with a lot of the men's program, AFL men's guys from various clubs, and I've been privy to seeing some of their off-season programs over the years. and this is probably over a span of 6 to 8 years. Some of my first clients I had in the gym were a 16-year-old Andy McGrath and Tim Taranto and Jack Scrimshaw. So I kind of built those relationships with them. And when they got to clubs and they'd come back and do their programs from their clubs, I kind of got to see and learn from what I saw there. And like some of the programs were incredible, and some of the programs you kind of sit there and ask yourself, well, what are they kind of thinking there? And I guess some of the clubs have been really good with their transparency. I've spoken to S&Cs at various clubs. I've spoken to physios at various clubs as well. And a lot of it is, I guess, when you look at it from an elite program, the professional program, and you've got 30 or 40 athletes, depending whether you're the men's or the women's, and not all of them are going to do the club program, because some of them want to go out and they want to get an individual coach, because individually, like for themselves, they just want to get better. And they're probably thinking in their head, hey, if I'm doing the same program or a similar program that all my teammates are doing, how does that put me above them? Like, how am I getting better than them when we're all doing the same thing? So I need to go out and find other resources, whether it's a sprint coach or whether it's a Olympic lifting coach, or I'm trying to work on something specific within the strength and conditioning realm. So transparency is really important, but you got to understand that some of your athletes will want to go out and get better. And you see that in American sport, NFL. Like, it's huge in the NFL that all those guys are going working with private coaches in their off season. And AFL was transitioning that way. And now I kind of see it reverting back to the clubs. I feel, and from what I'm seeing, the clubs are controlling a lot more in the off season because of how big AFL is and how important, like, some of these players, you're paying them a lot of money and you just want them, all right, I need them to get back to preseason in this shape, or I need them to have some off time. So I'm going to program for them and be really specific with what they're doing, because we're trying to nurse their bodies through their career. So yeah, you get to see a lot of programs, and some of our girls work with different coaches. And one of my biggest takeaways that I've had from conversations previously and conversations I have now is, like, just most coaches will there do their duty of care, which is great. And like, just get them through the off season, make sure they're happy and they're healthy. And if they come back happy and healthy and there's nothing wrong with them, that's a tick. Like, yeah, that's the main thing. If they're happy and they're healthy when they come back, and they're not worn out and they haven't got some little niggling injuries or something, I guess as a program, you look at that and go, yep, I'm happy. Like, if they're happy, we're happy. So we know that we're going to get them for 26 weeks of the year, and they're doing our program for 26 weeks of the year in the AFLW. So we can chat with coaches from different places and go, yep, this is what the main group's doing. Interpret that how that you will, and kind of roll along with that. So yeah, I'm hoping with our program and all the resources that we're putting into the girls, that, as you said, that we do get there and win the big thing, because that's what we're all in it for. I guess that's one of the key focuses of any sporting team. Like, you're in it to win the main thing. You're in it to win a premiership, because I guess that bond, and I've never won a senior premiership, but I can just imagine that bond you create with people when you've won it all, from the equipment person all the way to the head coach, to the player that was best on ground that day, to the player that was sitting in the stands because they've had a year-long injury. Like, it's just it would be a special thing.
So on that, can you discuss the importance of injury prevention strategies in your training program? You talk about coming back and just being happy on day one of preseason, building up over preseason and getting them up for each game and in season. What are some of the injury prevention strategies that you would use?
Yeah, so we do a prep phase before they go out and do main training. So we get 10 to 15 minutes where they come into the gym and we can work on whether it's mobility exercises, or we're doing some specific muscle activation things, or we're just doing some real accessory-based exercises that we might not have time in their main gym program, because we're on a pretty strict time kind of passage when we're at training. And the main thing at training is football. Football is the main thing. So football training goes for 20 minutes longer than it was planned for. There's 20 minutes out of something else in the program that's getting eaten into. and you have to make those adjustments and you have to be adaptable. So at the start of our sessions, we're doing some, I guess IP kind of things. We're doing a lot of eccentric hamstring work. Before they go out into the track, we're doing some of their plyo stuff and some of their power stuff that when they come off the track, we go, hey, when they've come off a track after an hour and a half training, their power work's going to be reduced somewhat. So why don't we do it before training? And there's some things we've implemented within our program, and we ask for feedback from the girls and we go, does this work? And if the majority of them are saying yes, and this comes from the leadership group will talk to the playing group, and then they'll kind of respond back to me and goes, nah, that was too long. Like we went out there and we were a little bit fatigued for training, and like training's our main thing. That's our main focus point. So all right, next time we'll cut back. And similar things we do with our primer sessions in our captain's run. We do our power exercise and they'll give feedback. And I think it's really valuable if you're getting feedback from the playing group, if you're getting feedback from the coaching group, and then you're getting feedback from the people that are in charge of you and your department as well. So it's got to be a collaborative effort from everybody. And that's what makes a program work. Like, it's not a dictatorship. It's not what I say goes. It's not what I think is right is always right. Like I'm asking for feedback, and I'm using the people in my department, so the physios and the rehab coach, I'm using them as a sounding board going, hey, I'm thinking about, it might be minutia, right? Like it might be, I'm thinking about 3 sets of this or 2 sets of this. Like, and it's something as basic as that. You probably could just answer it yourself, but when you give them a bit more detail about what you're asking, then they give their feedback, and then you kind of look at it from a different picture and go, all right, yes, I see that from a different lens now. I understand. I'm gonna do a reduced approach, like the smallest dose approach, or to get what we're achieving. Or I might take that out, or I might reduce some range so that they are a bit fresher and we're not getting as much eccentric muscle damage. So just little things like that where you can confidently rely on other people to give you good advice and good feedback.
Love it. So what are some common misconceptions about strength and conditioning for female athletes, and how do you address them?
I don't know how to answer that one. Some common misconceptions. Like, I would look at it, some of our girls now, and when you look at their strength to weight ratios, they are as strong as maybe not top level men, but some of them are, especially some of the younger ones in the men's program. So when you look at it from a strength and power perspective, it's like you can treat how you go about achieving strength and power the same way. It's not that you have to kind of create lower standards for females in terms of strength standards. So we look at our NORD scores that we use for our readiness, and we look at eccentric hamstring strength and load. And we go, all right, we know for men's program, they're using a score of 5 as elite level for men's soccer. And I think it kind of transfers to footy as well. So why can't we chase that with our female athletes too? And a NORD score, for anyone who may not be privy to what that is you take their max force that they can produce, either limb, you divide that by their body weight, and then you times that by the limb symmetry index. So if they're 95%, it's times 95. If they're 80%, it's times 80. And then you get a score from that. And look, we use Nordics weekly, and we test is probably a loose term. We measure. And I think that some of the language you have to use is, all right, we're measuring this because we want to see your readiness, instead of we're testing this, because that might create a bit of anxiety around, I don't want to do that because I don't want to do poorly in the test. If I do poorly in the test, then I'm just clutching at straws here, but that might affect my ability to get picked. It's not going to affect your ability to get picked or anything in that sense, but we're measuring these things constantly. And what we've seen is, because we exposing them to this movement frequently, their scores have been going through the roof. And like most of our athletes are now at a score of above 4. and they're able to produce a lot more force. And we use that as a scale. And sometimes I'll flag it and go to the physios, hey, athlete X is her limb symmetry index is 10% greater than what it was last week. Can you chat to her or maybe screen her and see if there's anything going on? Or we see their force development might be down, and we might look at factors why their force development might be down. Less time between games. They might have played a game in wet weather. They might have played a really physical game. They might have reached high speed running a lot more. So we look at all these factors and take in. But I think for us, we set strength standards, and we're chasing them at the same rate that we would set strength standards in a male program as well. So we're not reducing anything because they're female athletes, and when we know that female athletes aren't as strong as male athletes, we're not putting that as on the pedestal that they're not male athletes, so we can't get super strong. So that'd probably be our main thing.
You've just touched on some sports psychology there in terms of terminology.
Yeah.
In your experience, what role does mental resilience and mindset training play in their performance?
Yeah, it's really impactful, especially on the individual level, that we need them switched on, and we need them focused, because they're going out there and they're representing the club. And all it takes is for one person to be off, and that can affect the whole team. And we're talking about match play here. But in terms of the gym, if we can get them confident and comfortable within the gym, and we've had girls come from different programs, and we've had girls come from different sports. We've had girls come just into the AFLW. So they might have created some negative behaviors towards things from their other environments. And we're trying to reshape that and change that. Like in the gym specifically, they might go, I'm not doing that exercise because I once hurt my back 2 years ago and it just doesn't work for me. I'm going to do this instead. And these are things that you want to change slowly, and changing them in season wasn't the right time last year. So last year I just kind of rolled with it, and we had the best fit approach to everything. And in the off season now, we're starting to work with some of these blocks, I guess, and some of these behaviors and go, okay, let's totally rebuild this pattern. All right. If you don't like putting a bar on your shoulders, let's totally rebuild that. If you don't like trap barring because it hurts your back, or you don't like doing RDLs because you don't feel comfortable, we're going to rebuild it from the ground up. And hopefully we can fine tune it, and we can troubleshoot things and work out how this is going to work within our program, so that we do have a positive relationship with this exercise. Or things as like testing. There's not a negative connotation around testing because we're pitting you against other people. We are going to do that because we're in a competitive environment, but also it's around where you are. And we set a lot of baseline. We get a lot of baseline data at Richmond with the girls. So we can reflect back on their power. We can reflect back on their strength. We can reflect back on whatever it may be. So we can look at, hey, our progress is there. And it may not always look like this, and it may not always be going up. And we don't want it to always go up, because then where does that leave us? We want it to be up and down, because that's the nature of being an athlete, I guess, and performance. So we're trying to rebuild real positive mindset around the gym, positive mindset around training. And I guess the biggest thing is balance. So one of the things that we sat down in our off-season meeting was, we said in our off-season period, let's give them the weekends. Normally you'd have a training session on a weekend where they have a structured training plan. And we said, let's let them be human. Let's give them the weekends and have their training throughout the week. And I think that made a really positive change within our program, because they go, oh, I can get my training done Monday to Friday, then I can go away on the weekend. Or if I miss a session because work or family commitments or something's come up, then I've got the weekend to get it done. I don't feel like I'm constantly chasing myself. So I think that was one of the big changes we made with mindset around an off-season plan and program. And yeah, I guess you got to have a two-way relationship as well to build confidence. You want your athletes to be confident in being able to talk to you and troubleshoot things with you, and have questions and queries and concerns so that they feel valued and they're being listened to. I think that's a major importance working with female athletes. I find that they want to have conversation around what they're doing a lot more. With a lot of some men's programs I work with, you can go in there and you say, hey, we're doing this. And they're going, yep, done. So yeah, that's one of the differences there.
You mentioned balance, and you talk about balance from a weekly planning point of view by giving them the weekends off. Football is probably one of the most dynamic sports on the planet, and there's so many demands of what you need to get in terms of components of fitness, you know, from speed to power to strength and so on. There's also so many demands when you bring in the football coaches, you know, so your skills and game plan and all that kind of thing. Within a week, how do you balance all of these demands so that you can hit everything that you need to hit?
Yeah, it is challenging, and that's where you need a really great high performance manager. So Eliza is incredible at what she does there in terms of structuring the week, and she's giving everyone their what is our biggest focus area from a football perspective? What's our biggest focus area from a running and conditioning perspective? What's our biggest focus area from developing athletic qualities, and whether it might be, all right, this period for this block, we're going to work on speed, or we're going to work on change of direction ability. And then what's our biggest focus from a gym perspective? She's getting all that information from the various people at the club. So for me, she's going, what's your plan around the gym program for the main group? So not our rehab girls. And I kind of set it out in terms of a long-term plan. And she goes, all right, this is going to work here, there, and here. And you go, all right, great. Now I can kind of structure what I need to do. And then we sit down and discuss what's the best fit plan of a week. So we look at keeping our lower body days to lower body days. I think one of the biggest things that any athlete I work with is that we don't want to be on legs 5 days a week. It's just too much. You don't allow for any time for recovery. You don't allow for any time for adaptation. So we go, when we're doing our lower body days, let's do a lower body day. Like, it's going to be a big day, but we can build volume and intensity over time. It's not smashing them with volume too early, smashing them with too higher intensity. So for example, on a Monday, we go, hey, Monday is a really good day to do some max speed work. Why? Because they're coming off a weekend where they're probably going to be a bit fresher. They're going to be a bit fresher mentally, going to be a bit fresher physically. So at the start of their week, we're exposing them to max speed. That's their first quality they're going to be exposed to. And then they're going to do their aerobic running. After their aerobic running, they might do a little bit of football skills. And these things are just developed and progressed over a period of time. And then they're going to do their lower body gym. So Monday, that's a big day of lower body work. But then Tuesday, they're off legs. Like Tuesday, they can focus on recovery. They can focus on their upper body session, or they can have a total day off, and we can push our week a little more. I think that's been really valuable in terms of how we're planning out our week. And it is literally down to the detail of how many kicks you're doing week 1 compared to week 8. What distance you're kicking over from week 2 to week 6. And especially with any return to sport or rehab athletes we have at the club, everything's planned in terms of their distance, their intensity, their kicking distance, their kicking volume, their gym stuff. It's all planned so that we can slowly build them up. And this is just all on the back of data, their GPS data, their gym data, and then just, I guess, common sense and principles we look at for sports science and go, all right, it's just constant exposure to overload. And what are we overloading? Are we overloading volume? Are we overloading intensity? Are we overloading duration? So you just got to pick your battles with which you're doing there.
Hey, Jacob here with a quick message. If you're enjoying this episode of the Women's Footy Podcast and you want more fitness tips for the female footballer, I encourage you to join our Instagram channel, Footy Fit Fam. Link is in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
So what are some of the key performance indicators that you track to assess the progress and readiness of the players?
Yeah, so this was a question I got asked in my interview, and the answer I gave is that I want to look at counter movement jump, because that's going to be able to give us an assessment of readiness in terms of, all right, is force down or is landing force higher, is jump height being reduced? And then we looked at Nordic scores as well. So their peak force and their limb symmetry index. So that were two of the key ones. And then we also have wellness that they complete every day at training. So we're getting a lot of information out of that. How do they feel? Where are they sore? How did they sleep? What's their energy like? So that's giving us key indications of, so before they get into the gym or on the track, we're getting all this information. We sit there as a team for half an hour, discuss any changes or modifications we may need. I'll go through and look at it. All right, who's got some soreness through the quad? Who's got some soreness through calves? So we might reduce their plyometric load, or we might take away heavier compound movements and try some more different strategies within our loading parameters there. And we're constantly in conversation with the physios and going, what are they cleared to do? So that was a big thing for us. It doesn't always work how you plan on it working. So my plan was to test counter movement jump before training, and we almost never got that done. So we started doing it after training, and you get some fatigue factors in that, or we unfortunately had a few injuries throughout the year. So some ankle injuries, some knee things. So that changes your program. And I guess you can become quite reactive to things, because when you're working at such a high level environment, and like there's a lot of pressure in a high level environment with any professional sporting team, you can kind of go, oh, like if we have an ankle injury, let's avoid this, or maybe we need to do more of this. And that's where you need a really good team to relate back to and go, all right, what changes do we need to make? How can we avoid said injury if it is avoidable? How can we get our girls to be fresher and more ready for games? And a lot of that goes back to, well, what are we doing with our training volume and our training load? Are they getting their recovery in? And that's where you need to be able to have open communication with your players, because they're going to be able to tell you best. Like you can look at data, but them as an individual are going to be able to tell you where they're at right there and then. So a lot of it comes back to that.
Communication.
Yeah. Communication is key.
So can you discuss any innovative training methods that you're using, or even technologies that you've implemented? You know, you talk about counter movement jump, measuring that, but like, is there anything else that you can discuss that you use to enhance their performance?
I wouldn't say anything's innovative, because a lot of the ideas I got for what I've implemented, I've just taken from other programs that I go, hey, that makes a lot of sense to me, and that makes a lot of sense to what we're trying to achieve. So we have our baseline measurements for everything. So in season this year, what we're looking more for is that we can work off percentage-based data, so that we know, all right, if we're in a maintenance block for our strength, we know what kind of percentage base that they should be hitting off a 3RM lift or a 1RM lift, depends on what the movement is. In season a lot, what we've implemented at the club is we work off RPE with their lifting, and whether that's the best fit approach, we're still kind of playing around with that, but it gives the girls a scope of where we want to be. And when you're one or two coaches in a gym and you've got 30 athletes there, you can't be prescribing weight for every single person, because it's not going to work in essence for everybody. So educating them about what RPE is and giving them ranges to go through kind of helps with the flow of the program. And then it comes down to when you are analyzing and you're looking back at their workout, which we can do through the program we use, the Team Builder app. All right, is this person pushing themselves enough in the gym? And then if you look at it and look at the data and what they've filled out, and you go, why aren't they? And then you've got all these other things to, I guess, analyze and go, all right, what's their wellness data like? What's the physio? They've got any notes about this person? Or have I had a conversation with this person? Like, how's life outside of football going? How's their motivation within the gym going? Am I giving them enough time in the gym as well? Like, am I actively seeking them out too? So all these things come into play. But in terms of what we're doing, like, we are a little, like, I guess you could say, compared to a men's program, for what I'm seeing, when I was at St Kilda working with the men's program there, they had TVs and iPads, and they were testing things regularly depending on what session and how many days out from football. But there was 4 or 5 of us in the gym. So a lot of bodies, a lot of coaching, and you got a lot of resources there in the AFLW program, and a lot of those guys were full-timers as well. In the AFLW program, you don't have as many full-timers and you don't have as many staff. So you're kind of limited to what you can do. And that's where you go, what's going to be the best fit approach for my team and where we're at within our season? And like, what would I be wasting time on doing? And I guess time and effectiveness measure kind of comes out to that. But like, maybe what you were looking for in terms of innovative stuff, we hit max speed nearly every single week. So I get 10 to 15 minutes to expose them to max speed at training. And as a background, as a sprint coach, I said that this is an extremely important quality to continually train and continually expose them to. So we had a lot of education around speed and speed development and exposing them to different positions in max speed and using certain drills and also have some competitive running in there. And we almost got to a point where we were getting an athlete hitting max speed at training weekly. And like in season as well, which is foreign. Like, you don't expect in season to be hitting max speed with athletes. Like, it's a kind of a taboo thing. You go, oh, is this dangerous? And for us, it worked really, really well. We didn't have too many muscle strains, and touch wood, hopefully this year is the same and follows the same method, but we didn't have too many strains that were attributed to lack of speed exposure or lack of deceleration exposure or just your typical injuries, hamstring or calf strain or quad strain or hip flexor strain. Like, we didn't get too many of these. Most of our injuries were contact based. So we evaluated the max speed stuff and go, hey, this is working for us. And the feedback from the girls is, yeah, we love it. Like, we love being exposed to this. And our goal is to get faster. We want all our athletes to get faster. So that's probably the one thing that we're doing really well.
I'm finding this so hard to not jump in and start talking because you're saying things that are really exciting me. There's 2 things I want to jump into, and I've fought really hard to not jump in and let you talk. But I want to dive down on one, RPE versus percentage base. But before I do, I want to continue the flow of what you were just saying on speed. So on a previous episode, I interviewed a guy called Nathan Kiley, who's now a strength and conditioning coach at the Brisbane Broncos and the NRL, previously with cricket in New South Wales.
Yeah.
He was saying in that episode about hitting max speed once a week right throughout the season. It's something that I truly believe in, as like, probably my background is like speed stuff. That's running mechanics is my jam. It's something I love more than anything else. And I'm a real advocate for hitting max speed 95% plus every single week, from week 1 of preseason right through to grand final week. Can you talk a bit more about your beliefs and your theories, philosophies, whatever, about that? And also what sort of like a speed session might look like for you, for any up and coming female footballer that's like, what does he mean? He wants me just to sprint. Well, how does that look? What does that look like?
Yeah, just quickly on the NRL thing, they are incredible athletes. Like, everyone puts AFL athletes on a pedestal within Australian sport. But you're looking at some of these NRL guys who are 100 kilos, who can hit 35k an hour in game, and their strength levels are just incredible. So I'm much of the same bread there with hitting max speed weekly.
Real quickly, I'm going to interrupt you because I'm finding it's really hard to not. Have you come across, there's a clip of a guy called George North, and so he was coached by Franz Bosch, who you may or may not be familiar with his name, all about positive running mechanics. Yeah, Bosch mechanics, all that stuff. So there was a clip from, I think, the 2003-ish or to 2006-ish British Lions tour of Australia. And Lottie Takiri, the Australian rugby union player, is trying to tackle George North, who's the British player. And North just almost picks him up on his shoulder and runs with him. And it's all because of like the Bosch mechanics and essentially like that ankle rigidity, having that strong foundation through the ankle joint. And it's like incredible. So talking about like the ability of rugby players who are 100 kilos plus running with speed and power and strength, like I completely agree with you. They're super impressive.
Yeah, I haven't seen that clip, but I'm familiar with some of the feats and some of the what they can do. It's funny, I've got a saying I live by, because I use things from Franz Bosch and Dan Pfaff and Charlie Francis and all that vertical integration stuff and sprinting mechanics. And you don't want to blur the line of sports specificity in terms of gym stuff, but in terms of angles and positions and muscles worked, you want to hit those markers. But I've got a saying, never go full Bosch, because you can get fully into the Franz Bosch method and you can start doing some funky things. But there's definitely some of his movements that we put into our programs, and I've been using them in private practice for a long time. And like these guys have trained world champions, Olympic champions, so they've got some merit of what they're saying and what they're doing. And they're some of the, I guess, the founders of applied strength and conditioning. So yeah, that's really important with our max speed stuff. Yeah, we're trying to get above 90%. A lot of it depends on game load, and then when we get them. So if we're playing on a Friday or a Thursday or Friday, you'll get them on a Monday, and it's a lot easier to expose them to max speed and also justify exposing them to max speed as well to the coaching staff or the medical team. If we're playing on a Sunday and they've got recovery Monday and then you're training Tuesday, it starts to get a little harder, because especially if it's been a really physical game and contacts are up. And that's one of the things once I started sitting on the bench at Richmond and I was at ground level watching them, they go hard. Some of those girls are crazy. They're running 1,000,000 miles an hour at each other. And it is still quite a contested game, which I think is starting to expand, because now you're getting athletes coming in and they're kicking the ball 40, 50 meters comfortably. Whereas that's not always been the case, and not all players can do that. So their ability to clear packs and clear ground is getting much better as well. So we look at exposing them to our max speed stuff if they get cleared by med. And what a session may look like is, after they've done their warm-up, we focus on 1 or 2 specific drills, because we do have such a short time. 1 or 2 specific drills, and then we're doing wickets. I find wicket drill is probably one of the easiest things to implement, because it helps change and make some real positive changes within their running gait, just automatically. And our girls picked up on the stuff really, really well. We might have 3 different levels of wickets depending on their speed or their stride length. And there's some things that we've just kind of worked out from observation. And with particular athletes, we might film them going over the wickets, and we might discuss this as a team and go, all right, how can we further enhance this person's running ability or running effectiveness? And then we might do, from different positions, some short, sharp acceleration stuff. So I'm a really big believer of exposing them to different positions, so that when it may happen in game, their body is more familiar with it. So we might get them lateral starting, we might get them half kneeling, we might get them on the ground, we might get them off a contact and running. And we might use cones as a constraint then for where their foot contact's being made. And we're educating them, and we're also showing them, all right, if I'm starting with my legs really far apart and I'm going for a 2-point acceleration, where do you think my back leg's going to land? And they see it, and that makes sense to them. So I'm like, we want to be a bit more condensed with our stance, so that when we go to move, we've got that ability to get down and underneath ourselves and quickly get off. And our first 3 steps is vitally important. Like, if you're not going hard in your first 3 steps, how do you expect to be going hard in the next steps after? We might also start implementing balls into our drills, where we're going I want you to run as hard as you can for 10 meters with a footy under your arm, and then make a decision what you're going to do with it. So we start adding specific football craft into it, where for them at the top level, it makes sense to them because they're going, hey, this happened to me on the weekend. Or yeah, I see these positions. I feel this. This makes sense to me. So now I'm going to be really invested in doing it because it's going to make me better. And if you're giving them things that are going to make them better, they're more likely to really invest. So that's what that looks like.
Really quick, for anyone that's not aware, what's wickets?
So wickets is where we get them to run over cones or little mini hurdles, and they're spaced out at different distances. Throughout the wicket effort, the distances will get a little bit longer as our speed increases, and it's just a really good drill for max velocity mechanics because it gets them up nice and tall, it gets their knee drive up nice and high, and it gets them landing underneath themselves a bit more efficiently. Most field-based athletes I've ever worked with, they will run a little more leaning forward. Their knee drive's not going to be that high. And they most likely land a little bit in front of themselves, which a little more load through hamstrings when you're landing in front of your center of mass at max velocity-based positions or any position. So it's a really good corrective tool for developing. And what we did in season is we only use cones because I said, I haven't got the time frame to use wickets and get them into high hip flexion, knee flexion based positions. And then I kind of took that and go, if I'm suddenly getting them into really big hip flexion positions, is that going to have a negative effect with their kicking load? Because their body's probably like, I haven't been in this position before. And now you're asking me to get into high kicking loads, lots of change of direction, lots of XL, decel, and I'm playing on the weekend. So we just took the minimalist approach, and now the girls are going over wickets, and we've got some girls that have increased their stride length dramatically. And they're hitting max speed over wickets, which is typically, that doesn't happen. So once we get them into a competitive racing scenario, we're expecting that they're going to keep improving their speed. So,
and an example for anyone that's unsure about that, higher knee drive might be like mini hurdles as opposed to the cones. And I can hear this question as well. It might sound very basic, but I'm sure there'll be people asking it. What's a 2-point start? Because I hear this question same as a 3-point start. What does that mean?
Yeah, so 2-point start is just where you have two bases of support, so your feet. So you'll be in like a short split stance, and we're educating on how we want to start in that short split stance. But then you can also look at it and go, no matter what you do, people are going to false step. And if you don't know what a false step is, go watch an 800-meter start, and you'll watch them all go backwards before they go forwards. And typically when you watch people on field, they're going to revert back to that position as well. It's just like an innate kind of movement that people do. But can we get them exploding forward and exploding outwards? And can this become transferable to sport and what they're doing on field? So that's what we're working with. So yeah, we'll mix it up from 2-point to 4-point, which is like an athletic starting block position where you're on your hands. And yeah, they're always going left side, right side. And why do we do that? Because on a footy field, you may be required to move off both sides of your body. Like you're not a 100-meter runner. You're not always going to go favored foot in front. So we're trying to make them as adaptable athletes as we can.
So going back to what you were saying before, where I was saying there was so much stuff that I wanted to dive into. One of the other things that you were talking about was RPE and percentage based. So I want to dive a bit more and get your opinion on that. And for anyone that is interested in more on this, I interviewed a guy called Kurt Vogel, who's from Brisbane, worked with a lot of soccer players, particularly at the NPL level, National Premier League, so the level below the A-League, with the Brisbane Strikers, the Lions, Brisbane Lions in that soccer, and a whole bunch of other sort of clubland players. And he was talking about the impact of menstruation on high performance. And so through that, this is where in that conversation, we had a conversation about RPE versus percentage-based like training. Can you explain a bit more about what that is, like the RPE training in the gym versus the percentage-based stuff?
Yeah. So the reason that I kind of moved towards RPE-based training was it made sense on an individual level to get people to lift to how they feel on the day, and have them understand that things don't always need to be going in a linear fashion. Like we don't need to hit 80% one week, 82 the next, 85 the next. Like you might come in one week and like you're training individuals here, you might come in and go, oh, I've had a shocker of a day, or I'm really sore from the weekend. I don't know if I'm going to hit that percentage. And then you're starting potentially to create negative loops if people continue missing a percentage-based lift, or they see that, oh, I can't hit that today. I'm not getting better. I'm not getting stronger. Like, is that what they're taking from the program rather than an RPE-based program where their previous week's lifts will be there? So they've got that data and information. Their working max is also there as well. So they can, if they are savvy enough, they can kind of get a gauge on a percentage-based lift. But they're lifting to how they feel. And I think it's quite difficult for any novice, either whether they're a novice lifter or a novice to RPE, to nail down what RPE 8 is for an RDL. Because you go, all right, we're doing, and the way we increase our intensity through our sets is we might start set 1 at RPE 7, set 2 is RPE 7 to 8, set 3 is RPE 8. So what the athlete's gauging from that is, all right, the coach is telling me here that I want to get a little bit heavier each set. I want to be challenging and having less reps in reserve per set. Or, and you need to educate them, I'm accounting for fatigue and my RPE 7 to 8 might be the exact same as my RPE 8. And we're getting them to lift based on how they feel, but narrowing it down to, and you see this all the time in the gym, you go, all right, we're in a period where we can chase strength. Like we haven't got too many contradicting factors at the moment. Like we're not playing games. I want strength. I want heavy. Let's go. And you watch them lift and you go, how many more reps do you think you could have done? And they say, oh yeah, 2. And I go, all right, chuck another 10 kilos on the bar. And then they do that set. And I go, how many more do you think they could have done? And they go, oh, 2. And you go, no, chuck another 10 on the bar. And then they go, oh yeah, that's 2. So it does take a while to nail down what that might actually be for them. But it also does allow them to go, hey, back on our wellness data and on our RPE stuff, today we can chase because we feel good. And our RP is asking us to go a little more intense than last week. So let's get after some numbers. And that may reflect on a percentage-based loading where we've gone from 84% to 92% all of a sudden. And if you looked at that from a percentage-based program, you're going alarm bells, like this is too much of an increase. But one of my good friends says, if you can, ride the wave, because you're not always going to be able to ride the wave for very long. So it gives us that kind of bandwidth to play with.
So one of the massive buzzwords in any sport really, but particularly football, is culture. Can you discuss the importance of culture?
Yeah. It was when I walked into Richmond, I guess one of the first things I kind of felt as someone new coming in, and like you go, Richmond, that's a big club. But I walked in there and I go, this place is awesome. Like no matter who walks past you in the building, whether it's the top dog, CEO, or it's a sports science person, or it's just someone else who's in the staff, they might be in membership sales. They smile and say hello, and you go, how good's this? Because when you walk around on the street, people don't smile and say hello to you, and you could walk through any business and not every person's going to smile and say hello to you. And you go, all right, this makes me feel welcomed. And then it's a top-down approach, I feel, in a lot of places. So what the coach is kind of his message across to the playing group and the staff. And I made it a key thing. When I got to the club, I sat in on every single meeting I could. All the players' meetings, I just sit up the back and listen to the way the coaches would communicate to the players. And then how as well that the players would get up there and communicate with the playing group, and they have all these little things where someone will get up and they'll share a bit about their life story or how they came to Richmond. And I go, these are so many great things to take from this. And I use some of it with my staff at my gym, and with my clients as well. And you kind of just learning from other people. And one of the great things because I've worked by myself, I've worked as a self-employed for 6 years. And when you're self-employed, you have to make all the decisions, and then people are relying on you. And I guess you can kind of just get stuck doing the same kind of thing. And then when you go to a place where you've just got a role and a responsibility and you're part of a team, you can see how other people are doing things, and that helps you build upon your own culture and helps build you upon your own skills and expertise. And I've taken a lot from the way our head coach Ryan Ferguson communicates, and it's always so open, and it's never about the week as is. It's always about the journey. Like, yeah, we're preparing for each week individually, but we're on a journey for something greater. And you've touched on it already. We're on a journey to win the premiership as a club. And I think every single person that's involved at that club is committed to the same thing. And that's where the culture aspect comes from. Like, we all know, like, you have a 40-point loss, you lose in sports sometimes, but we're on something bigger here. We're on a bigger journey. So it's a really fun place to work. And that is because everyone's bought into the same thing. And it's a really open environment as well. Like, it's not, people probably think of football in terms of 20 years ago, and they look at very much like almost a military camp, top down approach, like screaming coaches. That's all gone, I think, from the top level. Now the coaching approach is really different, and the approach to the way we're all working towards something, but we're not just footballers, they're people as well. So we're interested in what they're doing in their life, and that's from everybody, the staff, the players, the coaches. So it's been really fun working there, and I think that's a testament to the head of football, Kate Sheen, and the head coach, and then the way the club is also kind of, this is what we're going to be known for. We're going to be known for a place that people want to be. And I think one of the biggest things that I saw in this off-season period is we didn't have many people leaving the club. We had people wanting to come to the club, which is awesome, but not many of our players are going, I want to get out of here. And that's a big testament to your culture. Yeah.
And what do you think that is? What do you think Richmond has done to create that?
I would say, like, I know Ferg, he always reflects on his time where he was coaching with people like Craig McRae. He was a part of assistant coaching group, and a lot of the language is similar. So I guess you kind of reflect and build off your past experiences as a head of football or a high performance manager or a head coach, and you take all the good stuff, and then if you work on integrating it, and it's a collaborative approach, and you really sit down there and define, all right, this is who we are, this is what we want to be known for, and this is where we're going as a club, you can be successful. I think things start to fall apart when the communication isn't there and the collaborative approach isn't there, and one person's trying to drive too many of the decisions. That's how I feel as well as being a business owner. If it's always me making the decisions for the business, it's not going to be the best outcome for the business. It's not going to be the best outcome for the staff or the clients. It needs to be a collaborative approach where other people can open my eyes to a different lens of how they're viewing things. And you take that on board and you go, all right, we can build off this. Like, what I think is just a platform. We need to be able to build. We need different kind of opinions. We need different people involved. And you go back to the playing group as well, and you go, hey, we're going to give you absolutely every resource possible to succeed. Now we need buy-in from you as a playing group, making sure you're ticking every single box. And that's what our playing group does extremely well. And I guess from a leadership perspective, we got one of the best captains, I think, in the game, Katie Brennan, ultimate professional, and just she's a fantastic individual, and the way she leads is really incredible, and the leadership group she's formed around her as well. So I guess we're lucky in that sense that we've got really good people at the club, and that was their selling point to me. Like when they were interviewing me, they were kind of going, hey, we're interviewing you because we want you, but you also need us. Like we're a really good club. Like we stand for good things. You're going to get better being here. And I guess when you walk into something and they're kind of selling for you as well, where they're going, hey, you're going to help us be better, but we're also going to make you better. You go, okay, this is a place I want to be. So yeah, it's good.
That's awesome. So you've got some other stuff going on outside of football with Richmond, with your own business. Tell me a little bit more about the business and this speed project that I've been hearing so much about, and all the amazing things you're doing with that.
Yeah, so the speed project was an outcome of COVID. I worked at a sports med center in the city, and I was just a subby there, got laid off during COVID because they had to look after all the part-timers, and the gym obviously closed down as well. And I was going, what am I going to do for however long this is going to last? And I said to myself, look, I need upskill. So I did a few different courses. I did the ALSIS course. I did the Exos course, and I did a mentorship with a bloke called Pat Davidson as well, who I really kind of aligned myself with early. He's gone a bit off the crazy end lately with some of these stuff, but I guess social media does that to people. But one of the big things I saw in terms of my own coaching was, yeah, look, strength is always going to be the main pillar of any kind of program. But in the conditioning side of things, I felt comfortable with different skill acquisition things. I've tried my own hand at, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. I see one of the biggest things in field-based sport is sprinting, speed training, getting people running better, getting people running more effectively, getting them faster. So I made a big investment in myself and I had a bit of an athletics background growing up, but to get better at coaching speed, running myself, and then I aligned myself with my business partner for the speed project, Ash Gudgeon, who also had a big background in that. He's an osteopath by trade as well. So we kind of, there's a multifaceted approach to what we were doing. And then we just got really lucky with where the landscape was with Australian sport, where in the off season, our athletes weren't able to go to America and Europe and everything because they were stuck in Australia. So we got to work with a lot of high profile athletes and kind of build our brand really, really quickly. We had guys like Scott Pendlebury and Harry Mackay running with us. We had Chloe Malloy and Tani White and some big AFLW names as well running with us too. So we got that instant exposure, which was really important for any new business. And what we were doing was different. It was not many people were going, hey, we're sprint coaches for field-based athletes, and that's it. That's what we're doing. We're just going to make you better runners. We're going to make you better sprinters, faster. And we can tie the other things in. Like it was more the S&C coach would dabble in a little bit of sprinting stuff, and hey, they might get down to a track or a field and do some max velocity work, but we kind of took that further, and now you're seeing it a lot more common. Like there's a lot more coaches out there delivering really good quality sprint training for athletes, and we're having a kind of we're having a golden period in Australian athletics as well. Like if you look at all of our running records from your 10K to your 100 meters, there's records dropping weekly, monthly. There's the women's 400, they were all running 54 seconds. And then all of a sudden over the 2 weekends ago, they're 51 seconds, and there's 3 or 4 of them doing it. So we're in a little golden period with Australian athletics, which is super exciting because for too long, people haven't considered us as great sprinters. And hopefully that next wave of sprinter that's coming through, we can start taking the world stage by storm and making a mark. So that's the speed project. The gym, Sixth Principle, I've had for 6 years. It started as a 2-man show. Me and a guy who just contacted me out of the blue, wanted to do some shadowing, and I then said to him, mate, I'm going out by myself. Do you want to come and help me out with clients? It started off as 30, 40 clients. Now we've got 6 staff, we've got our own gym, and we've got 160 to 170 clients. And we work with people from 11 years old to 50 years old, from people on the world stage to playing local sport, to people just getting in their lifting journey, or sports rehab stuff as well, or any kind of injury rehab, it's really fun. A nice diverse population. So that, with the professional sports stuff, I'm in a really happy place with coaching, which is exciting. And I hope that the AFLW stuff gets to the point where the game gets bigger, the crowds get bigger, the money gets bigger for the athletes, but as well as the support staff as well. The caps get greater, and that all comes down to the things that I mentioned before. But if we keep investing and the league keeps investing more on players and staff, the game's going to get bigger and better. So I do all see it coming upwards, albeit slowly, but it's an exciting sport to work within.
How can people contact you to find out more about your gym and this Speed project?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram at the Speed Project Melb, MELB, and then the Sixth Principle is the Sixth Principle on Instagram too. We have a website for the Speed Project, which all our products are on. We've got online programs. We do a lot of in-person stuff as well. Look, if you're learning to sprint, in person is the way to go. You can't learn to sprint through an online program, so it does make it very difficult. The gym, we're down in Moorabbin in Melbourne. We have very much an open door policy. Knock on our door and we'll happily invite you in and show you around. And then I'm not very active on social media myself, which is probably, like, I would encourage any young coach to be active on social media and put yourself out there, because more exposure you get to people, the more people are going to align with what you're putting out there and your philosophies of coaching, and it's just going to help you grow as an individual. I do a poor job at that on social media, but yeah, at coach.Jarrad Kay on Instagram.
Awesome. And we'll link all that up in the show notes. As we start to wrap up though, tell me, what's your most memorable moment in your strength and conditioning career?
Ooh, that's I just love being a part of stories. I couldn't pick one moment specifically, but I love being a part of a journey, and I love being a part of a story, and seeing some guys from our gym that have been overlooked in drafts, that have been told they're not good enough to play AFL, that have faced adversity through long-term injuries, and now they're playing at the highest level. We've had 2 guys from our gym, Liam Reedy, he's up in Fremantle, and Mikelti Lafau, who's actually debuting this week for Richmond. Seeing stories like that is just, that's why you do it. That's why you're a part of it. Watching people succeed and get to the highest level and live out a dream, like that is, for someone like, for me, it was always the biggest dream of mine to play AFL. And like, imagine achieving that. It'd be an incredible feeling for the individual, and it's an incredible to be a part of. So they're some of the most memorable ones, as well as seeing some of our young boys and girls get drafted to clubs. Again, just ticking off that life dream. Yeah, so I would say being a part of stories where people are achieving things that they thought may not be possible, or that is at their pinnacle of their life currently.
And last one, where do you see women's football going in the next short 5, 10 longer years?
Yeah, look, there's a bloke called Ben Stanley, Enhanced Football. He's up in Queensland doing some
Funny you say that. I just got told about this guy just literally this week. Look him up on Instagram. It looks awesome.
Yeah, you need to get him on the podcast, because he's doing some incredible things with women's football and football in general. And everyone I know in football circles, whether it's recruiters or coaches, is talking about there's a lot of girls in Queensland in this under 16 age group that are going to take the AFLW by storm. Like, they're absolutely incredible. So their development pathways up there must be really impressive, and they must be really well run. So the game's just going to get faster, and more athletes are coming into the game that have been playing football since 8 or 9 years old, and they've been exposed to female football from that age. So they're coming into the game a little more polished than some of the athletes who are coming into the game in inception. So it's just the game's getting better. It's getting quicker. Yeah, I see it really. And I think the Matildas thing last year helped women's sport go to that next level in Australia. Now everyone else just needs to buy in. The memberships and the crowds, they need to buy in. I think the AFL needs to find a way to structure the season better. Whether the AFLW is in line with the men's season and they're playing games beforehand or something like that's beyond my scope. But yeah, women's footy is going to be it's not going backwards at all. So it's just going to keep getting bigger and better. It's really exciting to be a part of, and hopefully we at Richmond can be at the forefront of these changes and winning premierships, because that's what it's all about. Having fun, winning flags.
Well, I said it last year. So in the next 3 years, so I've got 2 more. It's either 2024 or 25. Richmond AFLW are going to win the AFLW premiership. That's my tip. So let's see if it comes to fruition.
I guess like a parent of your own kids, you go, oh, how special is this group we've got? But I'm so excited at the prospects of this year. Our players, the energy and the buzz around the group, some of the players we've got into the club as well. Others who have managed to get a really solid off season in so far. And I've managed to be able to work with a lot of them personally at my gym that have come down and invested in their own time. So I think we're going to have, I know we're going to have a really exciting year ahead. So it's, hopefully we can chat at the end of the year again and we can reminisce about a successful 2024.
Yeah, let's do it. So real quickly though, I know I said that was the last one, but I want to make this one the last one. What's next for Jarrad Kay?
Yeah, so I'm actually not sure, because I think I mentioned it before. Right now, I'm really happy with where I'm at with coaching and the exposure I get. Ideally, would get a part-time role at Richmond. So if the people that make those decisions listen all the way through this podcast, that's an ambition of mine. And then just keep growing the business and keep helping people get to the top level, keep helping people get back to playing sport, keep helping people playing sport for longer. And then personally, some things that I want to achieve is I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro last year. I've got ambitions to climb bigger mountains, harder mountains. So, and then starting a family, I guess, would be the next thing for me. Yeah. And maybe my people around me probably won't like me saying this, but maybe play footy again next year, but we'll see. I'm still chasing a senior premiership myself. So, yeah.
Well, Jarrad, best of luck with all of that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting again at the end of the 2024 season. Thank you so much for your time today on the Women's Footy Podcast. And
appreciate you having me.
I just can't express enough. Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Cheers for having us.
Are you a footballer who wants to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level? My new ebook, Strength and Conditioning 101 for Female Footballers, is now available. For free and instant access, simply head on over to jacobandre.com. Link is in the show notes.